Hello everyone and welcome to your Sunday night edition of the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett and I'm joined this Sunday evening at the moment by Iain Mitchell. We might well be joined by Tommy McIntyre very shortly if he can get his internet working at a decent rate, but we're joined by Iain Mitchell. First of all, how are you doing, Iain?
Very good. Yeah, I was just sort of saying off air there, it's quite nice to be on after such a happy, positive, convincing win. Makes a bit of a change from the rest of the season so far. So, looking forward to this.
It absolutely does. You've touched on it straight away. So you can't ask for much more than a 6-0 win at home as you head into what is going to be a big week for the club, both in terms of transfers, incomings and outgoings. We'll get stuck into all of that as we go through this podcast. And please do send in your comments. We'll bring up as many as we can. Any questions you've got for me or Iain, or any thoughts that you think are big talking points for this week, just let us know. We'll bring them up and we'll get you all involved in the chat. But we'll be talking about transfers, both incoming and outgoing. We'll be speaking a bit about yesterday's game, and we'll be speaking quite a bit about Philippe Clement's comments after the game as well. There's always that thing about Giovanni van Bronckhorst never told us anything, and then Michael Beale told us too much. And I think Philippe Clement's got it just right in terms of how much he's telling us. But let's just get some reflections on yesterday's game. What 6-0 as we spoke about is a great way. It causes a really comfortable win, causes the goal difference as well that was already starting to widen with Celtic at the top of the table. What are your reflections 24 hours or so on?
Yeah, again, just super positive for once. Really good performance. Good tempo, good style. The players contributing who haven't contributed too much this season or last season, kind of thing. And yeah, just very overwhelmingly positive. I think the start of the game was a little sticky, I would say. The first kind of 15 minutes or so, a couple of loose passes, not quite at it straight away. But once we got that first goal, very much took control of the game. And I think the second goal just before half time, not to jump straight towards the second goal or anything like that, but it was a bit of a statement goal because it meant the whole crowd could relax, the players could relax. You just saw the second half was a lot more just how Rangers should play, really. Just a bit carefree, good style, and some really good goals in there, really. Goals that we haven't seen too much in terms of just getting to the byline, getting across, and players in the box. Like, it's such a massive thing we haven't done for so long, but yeah, really, really happy with all that, to be honest. So, strong start anyway, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a bit of a fuzzy Tommy McIntyre joining us at this moment in time. We'll give it a go, Tommy. We're just talking about yesterday's game against Ross County. What are your reflections on it 24 hours on?
I'm more than happy, given the quality of this is Ibrox, to be kicked back off. It has to be said, I'm having severe broadband issues, so happy to be a listener this week as opposed to a contributor, it has to be said. But I think Iain's covered some of it as well there. Covered the game in gantry with Kyle yesterday. And yeah, all the caveats exist that Ross County aren't particularly good. They've obviously got a lot to do with their team, or they'll be staring at a really hard season. But Rangers can only do what they can do with the teams in front of them. And if that's a good bellwether of what Philippe Clement's trying to get out of this squad, and the fact that there was movement up front, an intensity, a directness to us, and some really good patterns of play, then that bodes well. But also how nice to be sitting here saying our forward line took chances. You know what I mean? Because the consistent narrative has always been we create chances, we don't take them. And that's been heaped maybe slightly unfairly on absolutely the shoulders of Cyril Dessers, not giving him a complete pass. But he played really well. Our other forward line players played really well. We were fairly decent in the midfield, and back line we performed really well too. And there was some interesting tactical Tav going in the middle and all that. We'll touch on all that. But yeah, listen, coming off the back of a game on a Saturday, it's a positive Sunday, and that's before we even get to Ben Davies. So yeah, listen, that's a good news story. I'm quite happy.
Absolutely, it's a good news story. I think Stephen Galt here probably reflects how a lot of people are looking back on yesterday's game. He says, can't get carried away with yesterday. Ross County were rotten more than we were good, and they were coming off the back of a 1-0 defeat to Spartans, weren't they, the week before? So I don't think they were necessarily in the best of form. Iain, we'll come on to some of the comments that he had afterwards, and Tommy, I know you were in that press conference for us. But Iain, first of all, his first comment when he started the press conference was that it was the best performance of the season. Would you agree with that? And is it one of those ones where it's okay? It's Ross County aren't the best team in the world, but it just builds a bit of confidence and builds a bit of that muscle memory, I guess, that we feel like we've lost when it comes to really positive performances.
Yeah, the Ross County standard is obviously the big caveat of all this, because they got beat off Spartans a few weeks ago. They're just not a good team overall. But I would also add into that Motherwell aren't a good team. They had all the injuries, and we didn't play anyone near as good as that against them. I wouldn't say Kiev were great, and we saw nothing like those patterns of play, that style, that aggressive press, all these good positive buzzwords. But we finally started to see what these guys are doing in training, kind of thing. I don't think it's a coincidence. You mentioned it's the best game of the season so far. I think that's undoubtedly, but individually, there's a lot of players who probably had their best game for Rangers yesterday. Dessers, I think he's had a few good moments, obviously, last season, plenty of goals and some good finishes and stuff, but the hold-up play yesterday was a level above anything I've seen Dessers do before. Matondo, again, comfortably his best game since that West Ham friendly in his debut, so brilliant. Czerny, I thought, was solid. Tom Lawrence got an assist and a goal. Again, good performance. I don't think it's a coincidence that you see 2, 3, 4 guys having their best game and we suddenly look like a good team who can cause any team problems. We've had this over-reliance for so long on like Tav, as it was for years. Maybe Dessers in the last few months in terms of gets a goal, someone do something that makes something happen kind of thing. Whereas yesterday it was just 11 confident players in their groove, doing the right things most of the time, good positive decision making, and it leads to 6 goals. It's what we should be seeing more, but it's what we haven't seen, especially this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, I think you're going to give Derek Caldwell a heart attack here just before you answered that. He says, please, in the name of the wee man, stop using caveat. I'm asking nicely. And then you, right at the start of your answer, you said it. Spinning bird flip picked up. Can I caveat that caveat? And then Derek Caldwell just said, come on. So I think we'll have to ban that word from the podcast, or we can maybe make it a competition, see how many times we can actually say it. We'll go one way or the other. I'm not quite sure which one, Derek, but hopefully you'll keep listening just to find out. Tommy, when Philippe Clement kind of has been speaking, not just this week but over the piece, he's spoken about how we'll start to see the best of this team about October, November time. John Suter got that question last week in his pre-match press conference, and he absolutely hated the question, and he kind of agreed with it, but he didn't look like he agreed with it. I think it's fair to say. Why do you think it is that he does keep reiterating that we'll see the best in sort of October, November, and how confident are you that will be the case?
Right, well, I'll walk I'm definitely not going to do that to Derek. I feel like we're pushing over the edge on a Sunday, right? But Philippe Clement is saying it because he believes it, which is he thinks he can get more out of this team, and he's trying to take some pressure off them, because there'll still be bumps in the road. We've got very tough games to look into, and he wants to make sure the team is insulated from that as much as possible, and he wants to make sure there's a bit of rationalisation and reasonableness in the support, right? Because we'd kind of got ourselves to a place, I think, where we're saying this could be a bumpy season. Now we're looking at, well, that's a good result at the weekend against a poor team, but a good result. And then we're looking to get players in, and we're starting to move people off that wage bill. So I think all he's doing there is just trying to maintain a little bit of composure round about it, but also say, listen, I can get more out of the bodies that are here, and also I'm going to bring in some more. And if that accelerates quicker than he wants, that's never a bad story. But it's like anything in people's jobs. You always, under promise, over deliver. The same goes for football teams. He's not going to come out and say this is the best that we'll ever play, right, after Saturday, because that's not logical. So what he's just doing is giving him, the team, the management, the club, just a wee bit of space, and we can go with them. But what we should be aware of is this team will probably still face into bumps in the road. That's just logical, right? But it's getting better week on week. And if we're seeing that, then we can all get right behind Philippe Clement, and we know what he's trying to do, and we can say, right, let's just keep the wheels turning. So that's probably why he's doing it. And it's fair.
Yeah, I think it is fair, and I do hope that we will see Rangers get better and better. Because if this is where we're stuck, then I'm not entirely convinced that any of us will enjoy the remainder of this season. Iain, Dessers and Matondo were two of the players that Philippe Clement picked out in his post-match press conference. He says that they're more decisive now. Both scored 2 goals each yesterday. Dessers seems to be much more clinical than he has been in the past. I think if you take out the first game of the season against Hearts, it's hard to think of a chance that he's really taken too much time over or squandered in the way that was frustrating everyone last season. Yes, that the Hearts game was one of them, but I think that's the only one that I can pick out off the top of my head. Do you think that's starting to see the fruits of the work that Philippe Clement and the coaching team are doing with the two of them? We'll go on to talk about, obviously, Matondo being linked with a move away as well later on, and how yesterday's performance might have changed people's view on if that's a positive or not. But just in terms of that comment from Philippe Clement, just talking about them becoming more decisive, is that something you're seeing?
It really is. Yeah, I've sort of touched on it in my first answer there, in terms of Dessers, not just the finishing and the goal scoring, but the hold-up play was night and day for me. And I think that has to have been something that's been looked at, discussed and coached a little bit through the week, because it was just so different to Kiev. The Kiev game is just trying to knock it around the corner, lay it off straight away. There was no stop and think, like, where are my teammates? What am I doing here? It was just like, get rid of it and I'll go into the box, which just doesn't work as a like number 9, your hold up kind of player these days. It's what Morelos done so well for us for years. And I think the ball to Tom Lawrence, when I think it's still 1-0 and he does miss the chance, Lawrence, it's a poor finish, but that ball is something I've not seen Dessers do enough for us, because he's the man that leads the line, should be taking in the ball and waiting for those runners, the pace, the shadow strike, whatever kind of role Lawrence is playing there, but he will run beyond him. So if Dessers can master that art, we're getting 2, 3, 4, 5 more clinical chances per game, and it's night and day. As his finishing goes, he just hit it. That's all I want to see. Just hit the ball. It's something, again, we don't do enough of. Tav was very guilty for it quite early in the game, and he has that one at the edge of the box, and he tries to dink it to the back post. We end up nearly conceding a good chance from it. So the fact that Dessers just took that ball on his right foot, smashed it with the left, I've not seen Dessers do that too much, to be honest. More often than not, I think Tommy and Kyle touched on it yesterday. You see the touch back into the right, then the left again, then the right again. It's just waiting for the perfect moment, whereas the defenders and goalies he's up against, you can just afford to smash it in these days, and that's what he's finally started to do. So I'm not going to get too excited over the two of those guys so far. Dessers have been good this season, I will give him that, but I'm still not fully bought into him. If he gets a goal or two next weekend, that will probably change straight away. But until he starts doing it, I think this is something John Walker's touched on quite a lot, but until he's doing that consistently in the big games that matter, I'll still be a little bit on the fence. As for Matondo as well, there's a few comments I can see there about would still sell him. I probably still would, to be honest. I don't think, not so much ability-wise, because we saw yesterday he can trouble defences. He's got pace, he's got a threat. But I think we all know he's a couple of games away from an injury or from a knock that keeps him out for a few more weeks. It's very similar to Ridvan in a way that you just can't rely on him. So if we can get him and his obvious wages out the door, replace that with someone a little more just consistent. It's a word we'll probably say a few times tonight, but a bit more consistency there, then I'd still be looking to do that as good as he was yesterday.
Yeah, before we come on to talk a bit more about and start to delve into the incomings and the outgoings that Philippe Clement spoke about, I just want to bring this comment up, Tommy from CGM55, who says Jefte continues to look good. He also hasn't been tested defensively, and that will be the acid test. I noticed that was something that you put out yesterday, just ahead of the press conference, that you continue to be impressed by Jefte and his showing so far. Can you just expand on what you like about him?
Yeah, I was sitting there waiting for Philippe Clement to win for the press conference, and my thoughts were turning to Jefte. I also mentioned it in the post-match reaction pod as well. I think for such a young man, I really like his ball-carrying abilities, but also his ability to attack the space and drive forward. His crossings, pretty decent as well. I liked everything about him against Ross County. And again, I'm not judging him on one game, but I think the majority of people, the more they see of Jefte, the more they like, in that he's very athletic, he's happy to get challenges in, but he's really, really good going forward, and I think there's a lot more to come from him. He's also at that, boilerplate great age where we can develop him, and if he continues on what we've initially seen so far, you're looking at somebody who would increase their price tag, and then absolutely we'll be able to move him on with a good profit margin, having developed a player. He looks like one that I think we can get really, really good stuff out of, and really, really positive player actually.
Yeah, it's Tommy. I'll stick with you. RFC72 says, is having a progressive left back like Jefte actually helping Matondo as well? I think it is, from my view, and it seems to be Matondo seems to be able to work well with Jefte that we've not seen him do with the likes of Barisic or Ridvan so far. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think he's nailed it there, or they've nailed it, I should say. And that partnership did seem to work. And you're always thinking about those partnerships in any part of the pitch. You can think of players individually, that's fine to a certain level, but it's a bit of a cliche, it's a team game, and you're looking for patterns of play developed on players who are able to link up with each other and get an understanding really quickly. And that Jefte to Matondo partnership seemed to be something that we can work with. And if we see more of that, fine. But yeah, you're always looking for it. I think we knew this with the kind of, if I go all the way back, the Candace Tav partnership that people still sometimes hark back to, that they seem to get each other and they seem to work well with each other because of the work rate, because of their knowledge, because of the way they played the game. If you can get really stable partnerships where one knows the other and it's working really well, that's never a bad thing. You're looking for your entire team to get to that at a certain point in time. And if this is where we are right now, goes back to your earlier question about Philippe Clement in the October-November timeline. If they're going to develop, if Matondo's still here, and they're going to play consistently, then they start to form an even better partnership. You start to see more, you start to see progression. All of a sudden, you've got a unit. And if you get enough workable, serviceable units across your starting 11, you're in a really good place as an entire team. And that's what Philippe Clement's trying to build, and trying to build on the training ground. Work as a unit, work as a team, and therefore you'll get your rewards.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very much the case. So let's move on to one of the final comments that Philippe Clement said. Sorry, I'll start that sentence again. Let's move on to one of the final comments that Philippe Clement had in his post-match press conference, and it says he's expecting a busy week on the incoming and maybe some outgoing, focusing on players that weren't in the squad for yesterday's game, which I thought was an interesting wee addition in there when you look at the likes of Matondo, etc., that were there. There's obviously been the announcement this evening that Ben Davies is on loan, been sent out on loan to Birmingham City. One I think that we all kind of expected. I wouldn't be surprised if we are still picking up a large portion of his wages at this moment in time. Hopefully Birmingham are paying a percentage of them that then allows us to go out and get someone else to fill in that centre-back role. But Iain, what are your thoughts on that Ben Davies move? It does seem like a straight loan without any sort of option or obligation to buy at the end.
Yeah, it kind of gives the impression that was the only deal we could do. I think if we could have sold him, we would have. If we could have put that obligation in, we would have. But main thing is he's out the door, so that hopefully makes room for someone to come in the door. I've said on here before a few times, I'm not the biggest hater of Ben Davies. I thought he was okay. Wasn't good enough to be a starter, and then you look into how much his wages are, how much he cost us, etc., etc. And the fact that the fan base had just gave up on him, understandably, from some of the performances we've seen over the years. But it has to go down as a failed signing. It looks to hopefully be over. I mean, like I say, I know it's not an obligation in there, but I wouldn't imagine he's going to put on a Rangers shirt again, as far as I can tell. So, yeah, the main thing is it's another body at the door, because I think I was on here a few weeks ago and we've all probably said it at one point. We're all kind of understanding now that if we have to bring anyone in, someone has to leave to make room for them. So we obviously saw the rumours to Kaiky, or Kaiky, whatever we're calling them these days. But yeah, I think the fact is we just need to get bodies out. And the comments are right. There's other guys there. You have Hagi's, Cantwell. The squad comment was interesting to me because I would have thought Matondo was in there, probably Dowell as well, as much as anyone. These guys who just aren't going to be first team regulars for us, and we do need to try and move on. But if interest isn't there, it's not there. So now they've got someone out, I would fully expect to see a centre back in the next 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I think that was the realisation I had, was that we will see a centre back in. There can't be. There's no way you can go in with just proper Suter as your sort of starting duo. I guess Balogun, who seems to be up and down with injury at the moment and illness, and then NCL. I don't think you can go in with that being your 4 centre halves. I fully expect there to be one coming in. I would hope that it's a starting centre half and a partner for Robin Proper, but I'm not sure where John Suter sits on Philippe Clement's approval rating. If I'm honest, I think if Philippe Clement's watching the game that we all watch, then he'll have some concerns. But if he sees some other stuff that we're not really considering, then it might well be he's just looking for someone to come in as a bit of a solid backup option. Tommy, Ben Davies on his way to the door. I always thought Ben Davies was a good defender, just not good enough for Rangers almost. And I think that came more from the physical side of the game than anything else. He's always been good with the ball at his feet, and that was one of the positives as to why what we all spoke about when we brought him in. He was left-footed as well. I think the only left-footed defender that we had until kind of Proper came in. So it meant it gave us that bit of balance that we were really missing, especially when it was Goldson and Suter, both right-footed, trying to play side by side. But I think he wasn't going to get the game time. He wasn't good enough for the bigger games, I don't think, and ultimately it's not worked out since he's arrived.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling out my Ben Davies checklist here. Right, not a bad defender. Check. Didn't work in Scotland and wouldn't work at Rangers because of some of the things that yourself and Iain have spoken about there. His style, the physicality, etc. Check. 4 million pretty much down the drain. Poor purchase. Check. Can we get him off the wage bill, early and replace him? Question mark. Now we've got him out the door on a loan, and that does free up something. But can we, do something inside that because there isn't an obligation, etc. Yeah, that's the story of Ben Davies. That's it. And now it's all about, right, he's not going to be rehabilitated, I think, in terms of the support size or Philippe Clement size. Right, he's definitely one of those ones that's gone. So he's the past, and we move on. You're right. It's all about trying to bring in somebody new. I wouldn't be overly confident if we went in with just Proper, Balogun and Suter. That said, and I know it's not the greatest test in the world, but that said, at the weekend, Sterling dropped back as well when it was required, and I think Sterling can absolutely play in there. You lose something in other places, but it's an option. The question is, would that be enough? No, I think we still need another proper centre back in there. To your point about Suter, I like Suter. Always have. I think he's got some flaws in his game. The ball over the top and the reading of it is a consistent one. I think if I get the feeling if Philippe Clement could replace him, he would. That said, he also brings that Scottish player dynamic, which Philippe Clement and the club, Niels Coppen, etc., have spoken about, having good Scottish players in that squad. So I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, I would like to see another centre back with experience come in there. It's just about what that mix looks like, because are you saying, right, I want a centre back who's a little bit older, maybe not playing somewhere, who can come in and get experience, right? Well, that's a Leon Balogun, really, right? Or are you saying I'm bringing in somebody on a loan or whatever who's going to drop straight in and push Suter out because Robin Proper is a starter? What's that mixture look like, and are you going to do it on a loan or a permanent basis? I think everybody would probably in a place of, if Rangers can get somebody who's a little bit younger, but it's a permanent signing, that would be more positive than a slightly older player who's on a loan signing to the end of the season. And that's certainly where I would pitch my tent. I would want somebody coming in. It just depends on making the numbers work. And I think, whilst we'll be picking up some of that wage, obviously Birmingham are picking up some as well. So any amount of money that can be moved off the wage bill helps to start to bring in new faces. And Philippe Clement was clear that he's expecting a few to come in in this last week. With regards to Matondo, well, he was in the matchday squad and he played really well. And Philippe Clement was very clear. It was about players who are not in the matchday squad, your Cantwells, etc. Looking at that, so I think the pressure and the focus is on getting those guys out the door and those wages off the balance sheet to allow us to move something on. So maybe not your Matondos and your Dowells are the first thoughts. And some of that might be driven by the fact that there's not a queue of people looking for them either.
Yeah, we'll come on to Hagi and Cantwell in a second as the next sort of talking points. But just to pick up something you said there, Tommy, you said that you had the feeling that if Philippe Clement could replace John Souttar, then he would. What gives you that? What gives you that kind of feeling around it?
Well, just the style of play. Actually, I think if you look at the context of somebody like a Robin Propper, I think Philippe Clement wants players who are maybe have that aggression and can play the game and maybe slightly better readers of it. I think Souttar still suffers from maybe a lapse in concentration every now and again as well, and he doesn't exactly. And it's not a hatred of or hating, I should say, on Souttar, because I like him, right? I just think he's got to start refining his game more. His lapses in concentration and his inability to consistently read the ball over the top is a problem and has cost us goals. And his indecisiveness in there somewhere as well. You know, we see him going for challenges, he pulls out. There's just a little bit of nervousness sometimes. Now, is he a good defender? Absolutely. Would I want him in a Rangers jersey all the time? Yeah, I do. Right, I like him. But I just get the feeling that if Philippe Clement could just have a slightly different centre-back pairing with two players who could step out with the ball and two players who can read it a little bit better, who can dovetail together, I think that also gives a little bit of confidence to the fullbacks, and maybe something that's not apparent in John Souttar's game. And I think from the small amount I've seen in a Rangers jersey of Robin Propper and more of his time in Holland, the ability to read that stepping into the coverage basis when the fullback goes forward and watching out for that ball over the top into the space. And I think Souttar struggles with that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that those are all sort of fair reasons as to why John Souttar may be not at the top of the list in terms of our defenders. But I do get the feeling that it'll be interesting this week to see if it is an immediate starter that comes in, or if it is someone that's more of a backup. That'll probably depend on who we've got lined up and who's available and wages and all that sort of stuff that we're not necessarily all privy to at this moment in time. Iain, let's talk about Ianis Hagi and Todd Cantwell, two players that are kind of grouped together at the moment, probably unfairly from Ianis Hagi's perspective. The two players that are kind of grouped together were in the first team squad, are now not in the first team squad, and look as though the club are definitely trying to see them out the door this summer. Ianis Hagi's had a few different links. I think the strongest one recently has been with Rapid Bucharest. There was a lot of stuff in there because his dad played for Steaua Bucharest, and how does that line up, and is that something that would actually stop him moving there? But Ianis Hagi and Todd Cantwell weren't in the squad yesterday, so they do fit into that criteria that Philippe Clement has spoken about. Do you expect both to leave this week?
They have to, yeah. Clement's obviously not either fancying them. I know Clement mentioned before about Cantwell's not wanting to be here, so that was the final sort of nail in the coffin for me. The worry for me is that there's no links to Cantwell. There's nothing that I've heard anyway, nothing I've seen. He's a good player. He's got talent. He can get you goals, get you assists, but there's obviously something putting people off. I don't imagine it's the fee that we're asking for. We don't know. We held out for Lammers until we got that sort of 3.5, 4 million kind of thing we always wanted. So maybe we have just been stubborn to a point, but at some point that has to drop if that is a stumbling block here, because I don't imagine there's no team in Europe or the Championship who wouldn't fancy Cantwell, just for the fact that if you do get him in the right headspace and do maybe not so much build the team around him, but make sure that he's loved and he's got the support of the management and the coaches and stuff, he will do well. I have no doubt in that. Maybe a club without the pressure that Rangers comes with is what he needs, but if you put him in a sort of mid-tier Championship team, I'd be quite confident he would get you 10 goals, 10 assists kind of thing over the course of a season. So there's a good quality player there. Hagi sort of fits the exact same bill. Again, there's been a little bit more chat about where he's going, but I would have thought these two would have been done weeks ago with how sort of frozen out they've been. There is the big difference, obviously. Hagi seems to be playing for the B team, putting in very strong performances for the B team. So I feel like if Clement wanted to bring Hagi in, it'd be quite a simple transition. Just be a case of, right, back in, see what you can do, give us sort of 10, 50 minutes for a few games, and that's quite a smart rotation option anyway, considering the state of our number 10, as it were, for now. So if Hagi wasn't to move on, I wouldn't be distraught. I'd be quite keen on seeing him integrated back in. But the Cantwell one, he's not playing for us again as long as Clement's the manager. So he has to go. Whether it is a case of a loan at this point, and same idea as the Davies one, you just get the wages out of the way, look at it again in January or next summer, and look for a sale at that point. But they just need to move on now. That's kind of my big hope for this sort of next 2-3 days, is that we see genuine interest kick off. We see the good sources talking about it, that's happening, and we do just move them on, because you've got to imagine both of them are, I don't know wages here, but roughly 20 grand a week, say, at this point. So again, it's a massive chunk of funds that we could be using for much better expenses. And it sort of links back to the fact that we are crying out for either a number 10 that can offer what Cantwell gave us in the good days, but not have Cantwell's antics alongside it, for want of a better phrase, or likewise another number 6, another centre mid in there, just to give us a bit more protection. Because my big fear with this team
just on that, Iain, apologies for jumping in, but just on that, I broadly agree with a lot of what you're saying there, but just specifically with Todd Cantwell. If a player won't listen, there's no chance of rehabilitating them. I think the club have done a hell of a lot with Todd Cantwell. It didn't particularly sparkle towards the end of Norwich. He came up here, been a lot of rhetoric, but not a lot of delivery. And I think trying to get players to play inside the system, etc., if they're not willing to listen and go with that, then at some point the wider collective needs to be more important. I think that's kind of what you're saying anyway, but I just wanted to be really specific on that one. I think Todd Cantwell has had a great chance at a great club, and I don't think he's done enough when he gets around to reflecting on it, to have said, I grabbed that chance with both hands and I really approached it in the way that I possibly could have. And when it ends, and then you're gone, and you don't particularly get a second chance. And given where he's come from and the fact that it's not worked now at a couple of places, you are kind of looking for that next manager who's going to say, oh, I'm the one that can turn that around for him. And that's a diminishing pool every single time. And there's no doubting Todd Cantwell has talent, but talent has to come with an ability to learn, develop, and understand your own flaws. And if you don't have all of that, then you're going to find the roads pretty narrow as you go on the rest of your career.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of what you both said. Iain, I want to pick up a point that you spoke about there around Ianis Hagi, and actually that he could potentially be integrated back into the squad if he doesn't move on. I completely agree with you in terms of he's much better than several of the players we've got that are sitting on the bench at the moment. I don't know the ins and outs of why he's playing for the B team and not still playing for us while he's trying to find a new club. I'm not entirely sure on that one. CGM55 said the Hagi situation is a shame. He's better than someone like Dill, who continues to do absolutely nothing whenever he plays. Tommy, Iain kind of touched on it a little bit there, but what does happen if we get beyond Friday's transfer deadline and we still do have Ianis Hagi and Todd Cantwell on the books? What's the next steps?
Well, a serious conversation happens with both of them, with the manager, to say, listen, we've all set our stall out here. I don't particularly see you as starters. I didn't want you as my go-forward position. Nobody's come in and met the right criteria to move on. That could be the club asking price, or the player's not interested in going to that particular club, or whatever makes it fall apart. So we've got a couple of options here, guys. We're definitely not paying you off because the club's not willing to take a hit on your finances, right? You can sit in the B team, right, and be in there, train on the, enter Auchenhowie on the other side of the building because it's all separated, right? And you're in there, not with your first team pals and all that. Or you can come in and work really hard to the winter window. You might not be starters, you might be peppered in and out or whatever, but if somebody then comes to me or Neil's Coppin in the background and says, what was the attitude like with these guys? I might want to take them on loan to the end of the season, or I'll say, no, do you know what? They knuckled down and they did what they needed to, and they've trained really hard and they've not been a problem in and around the building between now and the winter. And that helps you engineer a move. So that's it. I mean, the manager's laid his stall out. I don't see you in my squad. I don't see you here. I'm happy for you to go. If it doesn't work, it's then up to him and the players to say, right, we just reset and treat it as a short-term relationship. which is now to the window, and then we have another conversation, but everybody be professional. And I would like to think that the players would understand that and say, well, what do I want to do? Do I want to be in and around the first team, maybe get a couple of chances, prove the manager something, set that rhetoric within my agent and further afield of I can work hard, or do I want to sit and play in the B team? I know what I would do if it was me, which is I'd get to work and I'd try and win people over. And the question is, does Todd Cantwell and Ianis Hagi have that in them? I certainly think Hagi does. I think he would do that. The Todd Cantwell one, maybe a question mark that's a bit bigger on that.
Yeah, and there's also been loads of rumours around Ianis Hagi having a clause in his contract where that if he plays one more game, he gets an automatic pay rise. No idea if that's true or not. To be honest, it would seem a strange one given how little football he's played since he signed his latest new deal and what criteria he would have to meet. Tommy, I see you making a bit of a face at that one.
I'm not overly convinced with that. I'm trying to think who it reminds me of. Was it Michael Ball under Advocate? Where there generally was a clause at that point in time. But again, let's say even if that was true, right, and we just go into a scenario basis for a second. If you're Ianis Hagi and you say, right, I get a pay rise, whatever, let's say it's a couple of thousand, right? It's not absolutely life-changing for you. And you say, right, is that what's holding me back here? And no clubs come in. So I've got a couple of months between now and the winter window where Philippe Clement says I might play a couple of times if I'm willing to rip that clause up. What would you rather? Sit in the B team and you're never going to get that couple of grand extra and you don't really need it, or let it pass, say it's excluded, and then go in and start working with the first team again? I'm not saying that clause exists, but I'm just saying in that scenario, a big grown-up conversation can happen. And then that allows you, because ultimately, even Todd Cantwell, Ianis Hagi, Todd Cantwell, all these guys want to play football and they want to play first team football and they want to see the fans and hear the cheers and play really well and put themselves in shop windows. Why wouldn't you want to take that opportunity if it has any sort of presentation to you? I think that's the important thing,
Yeah.
And Philippe Clement and his team and the board and the club staff are willing to have those types of conversations with people directly.
Yeah, I think it's obviously part of the game, isn't it? Those tough conversations need to happen. And having sat in the room many times with Philippe Clement now, I wouldn't like to be the other side of the table from him when he's having those kind of conversations. When we get there, Iain, one of the things, or one of the kind of positions, and I guess this comes on to where do you think that Rangers' priorities should be this week in terms of positions for players that we try and bring in? There's obviously the running joke that we could replace all 11 and all 11 should be priorities, but realistically that's not going to happen. What I found interesting was Philippe Clement's comment around Cyril Dessers in terms of like we'd only let him go at the right price, but I don't see that coming in. We obviously saw the news earlier in the week about the Atalanta United bid that came in, but Cyril Dessers didn't want to go. I don't imagine if he didn't want to go there, I don't imagine there's going to be a club much different to that's going to come in for him, which kind of suggests he's going to stay. That also suggests to me though we're not going to go and buy a first choice striker, which I think at the start of this summer was high up on a lot of people's lists of priorities. Given Cyril Dessers' start to the season, a few people have maybe moved that down the pecking order a little bit. I think it's still high on my list, and I would still love it if a player like Lauren Shankland was to walk through the door and be in a Rangers jersey by next week. But I don't think that's going to happen. Is that the impression you get, that our priorities will be elsewhere and not in that main striker role?
Yeah, I mean, that's 39 minutes of the podcast before Shankland's name came up. It's got a bit of a new record there. No, I don't see a striker happening.
We'll have to check, Iain. We'll have to check who's won that on the This is Ibrox bingo. That it was Craig that said it first as well, right? We'll see who's done it.
Exactly. No, I don't see a striker coming in. You look kind of briefly through the rest of the squad. I think right wing's fine just now for Czerny. Actual central midfield, we've got a few options there with Raskin coming back as well. The problem for me with this squad is not so much the defence. I know we touched on needing a centre back, but if we're going into most games with Suter and Proper, with Baldwin as your fullback, I think would be fine for the vast majority of domestic games anyway. And likewise, I think fullback is still a bit of a worry for me in terms of right back. I think we saw yesterday as well, Tav doesn't quite have it to go a full season, but there was that little change that I'm sure we'll maybe come on to a little bit more in detail of how him and Sterling were sort of swapping roles quite a lot yesterday. So if we've found a little sort of piece that works in there, I think that should be fine. So my priority is still number 10 position if we're still playing with a number 10. I think it's a role that, albeit Lawrence was good yesterday, but we've touched on Cantwell and Hagi. If Lawrence does get an injury right now, like, who plays number 10? Do you bring Lowry up from basically the B team? Because he's not going to do what we want him to do. So not only do I think Lawrence isn't the long-term solution, I think any injury there is a disaster for us right now. So that'd be where if we have 3-4 million to spend, I would just go all out and try and get a number 10 that scores goals, makes goals, helps us with the press, because I think off the ball is something that Tom Lawrence in particular just doesn't affect the game with. Like we saw it again yesterday, albeit we were good yesterday, but that first half there was still those times where Dessers was sprinting at the goalie, sprinting at centre back, and there was no central player there to help him out because Lawrence just can't do that, which is fair. I mean, he's in his 30s now, he's off the back of a couple of bad injuries. He doesn't have 90 minutes of running in him anymore. But I need to see a younger, more energetic. Again, I'm describing almost the perfect player here, so we're not going to bring in someone who's going to tick every box.
I was going to say, are you going to spend £4 million on the best ever number 10 in the world?
Yeah, Kevin De Bruyne is on his way, but no, there's got to be a young sort of athletic player with that ability that can come in and either play number 10 or play number 6. Whether it's putting Diamandi a bit forward and making the number 6 the priority, it's that sort of that role that I would need to see filled if we have only the one major signing coming in.
Yeah, I think it'll be really interesting for me. I think as those, I still think we're fairly weak out wide, particularly with Cortez being out injured for as long as he is. Czerny has been good and bad. He's been, I guess, as inconsistent as you'd expect a winger to be in terms of some of his performances. The concern I have as we go towards the Old Firm game next weekend is that Tom Lawrence will start, and that just puts us on the back foot massively already from a defensive point of view and our ability to press in the right moments, because he's shown time and time again that that's not his game, and he's just not good at that, and it leaves Cyril Dessers isolated, and that causes all sorts of problems, as we've seen beforehand. I'm almost pointing out the game before it's even happened in that way. But I think a number 10, I'd say a winger. I'm not sure which side, and a central midfielder would be the ones. Obviously, with Ben Davies leaving today, you're saying a centre half then as well, as we discussed earlier on. So you're looking at 3, possibly 4, and I'm still wary about how likely we are to bring in that many players in this short period of time when we've gone weeks and weeks and weeks with absolutely nothing happening. Tommy, do you agree with the sort of areas that Iain and I landed on in terms of priorities? Are there any that stick out to you that you feel would also need sort of filled?
Well, just whilst you're playing that game out for the Old Firm, do let me know where you think we score so I can put my coupon on, obviously, right? So you get that crystal ball in front of you. But just as before I go back to that, though, just remember, just because nothing physically happens, players don't sign, there's no rumours, doesn't mean that all the conversations are all happening in the background, keeping tabs on players, talking to agents, talking to agencies, and saying, right, what's happening in there and there. You know, agents know that Rangers are looking to do business, and it's just being held up with some of the can we get players out. So as they start to see your likes of Davies and all that, the phone will be still going off to people saying, is such and such still available? We reckon that hasn't moved. Is that number still the same? Because some players and some other clubs and some agents will start to bend a little bit as well, in terms of, yeah, we were expecting X, but we'll probably take X minus whatever. And so there's business to be done. And that's always a great place, as people in this Ibrox know from me. I love it when there's business to be done and you can do business, because everybody's flexible to some extent. So that's a good place. Do I think the areas that you've identified and everybody in the comments section is identifying? Yeah, I think as a support, we're probably all in the same place, which is let's find that number 10. We need to be careful we don't, unicorn it a little bit and look for that, right, that number 10 is going to be the only thing in town. I do think Tom Lawrence is not the natural thing, although he played really well at the weekend. I would say it was his best game for Rangers at the weekend too, and he showed a little bit of class and quality, and he was, as an expected starter, maybe in his own mind as well. But I do still think we need something to unlock there. I do think we're a bit light in the wide areas, and probably through the middle as well. Igamani is a question mark. Training 3 days and all that. Is he actually going to integrate into the squad at any kind of large degree? The wingers, as you say, I don't want to duplicate, but wingers by nature will be inconsistent. But I do think, still a wee bit of a question mark over, Cortez, and I feel really bad for that boy in terms of the fact that he's had, a couple of injuries. But with that, that linkage of, we've spoken about the centre back. I think we're okay in the kind of full back areas. I would probably take another midfielder, an industrious midfielder, if I'm being honest, because I've got little confidence now in a Raskin return. I'm happy to be massively proven wrong with that, but I think somebody more in the mould of another Baron, actually. I would like that in terms of if you've got a Baron, a Diomande, right? And by the way, I'm fully aware that whilst we have a cryo chamber, it's not a cloning chamber, right? I say Baron just purely for simplicity's sake, right? Before somebody clips me and puts it up there. But in terms of if we get somebody who's got that in the industry and we win the midfield battle, because I still think by and large, we sometimes struggle to win the midfield battle. But when we do, we are starting to see that we can actually do something at the top end of the park. And I'd rather we force winning the game and winning possession like that first of all, and that works both domestically and abroad, whoever we get in Europa. It probably works for me too. The question then is, as you start to look at it, you've got your Danilo, your Dessers, and then whatever Igamani can add in, that looks like a forward central through the middle three. That's maybe a little bit light, but that's because Igamani's the question mark and Danilo's coming back off a full layoff. But yeah, what a redemption arc for Cyril Dessers, that he's now got people in a place whereby they don't want to see him leave. That's a good news story for Cyril Dessers, actually. I feel quite happy for that guy on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all quite happy for Cyril Dessers. We just need him to score in the big games, and we'll be fully behind him. I think you spoke a bit about Igamani there now training full days. The way Philippe Clement talks about him, I do wonder if it almost sounds like we've brought someone off the street who's not actually a professional footballer, and we're slowly just trying to make them one. The week by week updates of he's now managing to train 3 days in a row. It's like, well, we should just be able to train every day that we train.
At least he's not in the. At least he's not in the Carlos Pena special training program circle yet, which used to be, But there's obviously just a big gap, and they're trying to get him up to speed with fitness or whatever. But certainly the way that Philippe Clement speaks about him is probably interesting, in that he's talking about him in a way that he is fully expected to be a real first team player. And that was a bit of a mixed message when he first started. It was, maybe he's just going to be a development player. We're not expecting everything. But now it's he's training. We've got X amount. He's going to go straight into that first team and then be in match day squads. That's probably what I'm more interested in that. And it certainly sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, I think it does. It's just we're all very impatient, especially at this juncture of Rangers, whether it be where their squad is, how we've been doing transfer window, the fact we've been playing at Hampden, all of that stuff. I think that all just leads to more questions, and he probably would have been given more time and had less focus on him, had all the other stuff not necessarily been going on. Right, let's look at some of the transfer rumours, and I guess some of the profiles of players that we have been looking at and have been rumoured alongside us. I spoke about some of them during the week in terms of Josip Brekalo from Fiorentina, the 26-year-old Croatian international, comfortable either side's a winger. Has gone for 10 million euros as a transfer fee in the past between Dinamo Zagreb and Wolfsburg. Iain, is he one that you like the sound of and like the look of?
I do. I think you obviously watch the clips, and anyone could look good in a YouTube clip, but the 35 caps for Croatia is a bit of a standout for me. You don't play for Croatia if you're a bad footballer. They've got bags of talent, so that's a very good sign. He obviously had a good career in the Bundesliga, it looks like, and then he's moved on to Italy. Not quite done so well, but I think the big thing for me is that he's had that loan was it Hajduk split, I want to say, in Croatia since January. You'd imagine they play in a similar sort of mould to us in the sense that they're favourites for most of the games, most of the ball, always kind of against that packed defence kind of thing, being one of the bigger teams in Croatia. And I think when I was looking earlier, they got like 10 goal contributions in 14 games. That's decent numbers. And if you can bring that sort of player to us who can get goals, get assists, it looks very tidy in the ball as well. I think it's something that we could make us a lot better. Because we talked about the inconsistency from Matondo, the injuries, and the bit of the unknown with Cortez. That left wing, it's got to be a worry, because I don't think either of us are. I don't think either of us would be confident in seeing those two guys as our left winger long term. So if you've got a guy who's got some proven experience in top 5 leagues, played at a lot of major tournaments for Croatia, you've got to imagine he'd do quite well for us. Again, it's a bit of a project signing in some senses because he's obviously had that poor time in Italy, but I think it's similar to Czerny in that he's a quality player, he's got good experience, and he'd be coming in to be a first teamer. He's not going to be coming in as like a bit part player in any way. So quite excited about that one. And again, I was checking it. He's been on the bench for Fiorentina for their 3 competitive games so far this season. Not got on at all. They drew 0-0 tonight. He didn't get near the pitch. So I can't imagine he's got a long-term future there.
No, absolutely. And I think players like that, very much like the likes of Hagi and Cantwell in our squad, they're probably looking elsewhere now and where they could go. I think there was a few other clubs in for him as well, so it'll be interesting to see how that one develops. Tommy, one that we're linked with earlier in the week that doesn't look like it's going to go ahead and did seem a bit ambitious anyway when it was spoken about was Thiago Gouveia from Benfica, a 23-year-old. Apparently, he's been told by Benfica that he has to remain at the club, so they've obviously got high hopes for him. There's a number of tactics clubs can use to try and unsettle a player. I think we all know what they are, but I don't imagine that'll be the route Rangers go down with that particular one. So that one seems a bit of a write-off. But the one that has been sort of strongest recently and fits into the central defender mould is Kaiky Fernandez from Almeria. He's only 20 years old. Reportedly, we submitted an offer around 750k loan fee up front and then an option to buy for €7 million next summer with a 30% sell-on clause. It was Fabrizio Romano that told us about all of this, so that makes you think it is pretty legitimate. One of the things, and one of the ones that keeps coming up, in the comments is Morgan Whittaker, and obviously we've been linked with him previously, and bids have set around £7 million, £8 million, etc. It's interesting that with the option to buy or obligation to buy, whatever it may be, with Kaiky is around that 7 million mark. That's probably higher than I imagine seeing us bidding players, especially this summer. Firstly, what do you think of the link, first of all, and secondly, what do you make of those reported fees, I guess?
Yeah, well, I mean, the link makes sense. Young, pretty hot prospect, developable, to be able to get a return. I think, just my eyes drift to Sobo in the comments here. Probably the same question mark I have. 7 million with a 30%. Sell-on clause. That's a big trade back you need to get to be able to pay off that clause and make a decent enough profit from that. So you have to wonder just how much is he going to develop, and some of that's predicated on where you're playing him, as in European football versus domestic football. We know that when it comes to Scotland anyway. But yeah, that 30% number's pretty large. But in terms of his style of play, it certainly matches it. He's robust. He's got good awareness, can read the game pretty well, tackling ability, etc. Wins a lot of aerial duels, so he can stand up to that physicality, threaten both boxes, all that kind of good cliche stuff. I think his passing accuracy, I'm not overly one for drowning people in stats, but if you take like 23, 24, I think it was like 84, 86% passing accuracy. So he's quite comfortable stepping out. Certainly, like I said, I think the big thing is he matches up to some of that more experienced Robin Proper stuff, which is physically strong, able to be robust enough for the Scottish game, but has obviously different age brackets, but he's got an ability and an awareness to step out with the ball and keep the, play football as opposed to just being a lumpet defender, which, most defenders aren't these days anyway, to be said. But he definitely fits the mould. And for all those reasons I've just described there, my question mark returns back to myself and Sobo, so to speak, in that 7 million plus the 30%. But again, it might just be a case of some of these things you're going, right, is that just to make it attractive and get him in the door for the season for 750,000? And then you've got your centre back that you need for 750,000, quite well aware that he'll probably go back. Or if it's, if the market changes and you're able to do a better deal. That's probably a question inside that. Is it just being a bit cute? But I would certainly take, he's one that I would definitely think would match up to what we want and what the forward reaching model is, which is somebody who can come in, play well, great age, great nationality in terms of internationalism, and make a profit. It's just the right price point.
Yeah,
Iain, is it one that interests you?
Massively, yeah. It's a very Football Manager signing, so that's what I'm all about. But no, I think that
that's a much better answer than me. That was just right to the point. Whereas I'm giving you stats and giving you a lot here, and Iain just comes right across the top of me. Thanks, Iain. I really appreciate that.
Brazilian ticks every box for me. So no, it's the fee that kind of is surprising to me, because when I was looking at it, they bought him for €7 million. So they might just want the money back at this point, but the guy's got potential. Like, I mean, you look at the YouTube clips, and again, anyone can look good in a YouTube clip, but it was very like William Saliba of Arsenal for me, in that sense that he's just commanding, steps in, got a decent pass on him, as Tommy touched on. He just looks a very, very good player. Likewise, though, with Gouveia, he has been playing, and he played, I think it was yesterday, for Almeria, so I wouldn't imagine they're desperate to see him leave. They obviously saw that potential in him. A few comments there saying he was linked to Barcelona in his younger career, so I can see why 7 million was rejected if that was true. And again, you mentioned the 30%. I'm sure we would look to bring him in, sell him on, but whether it's maybe 7 million fee with 30% or an 8 million fee with 20%, it just sort of has a bit of a risk reward part in there. So profile wise, he's perfect for what we want to see. I have my doubts, and like I said right at the start, I think there's a few more priority slots than spending what would be surely our full budget on a guy like that, when we could look at a Morgan Whittaker, or again a more attacking threat, because I think that's where we're going to struggle more than a centre back.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it'd be one I would be excited to see come in the door, and sort of play alongside Robin Propper, and Robin Propper can be the experienced head, and then we can see this guy develop. It would be a really interesting one, and one that I think a bit of a different market from where we have been in the past for that kind of thing as well. So that would be really interesting. Tommy, just the last one to kind of look at, it was all over the Scottish mainstream media at the end of the week that Blackburn Rovers captain Lewis Travis was getting a guided tour around Auchenhowie. The club quickly rubbished this. Lewis Travis is a bit of a combative central midfielder who kind of fits the mould of what I think we all are looking for in that space. But Rangers denied that it was that he was at Auchenhowie at all. I see you shaking your head there.
Strongly denied, I think might be a better phrase, whilst shaking their head and laughing along with the rest of us. I think it was the Sun who, without probably clarifying what they thought they'd seen, jumped in 2-footed and got a straight red, so to speak, for their silliness. No, I mean, our media team have made some mistakes, right, as any team does, but not really in the business of showing players round about whilst all the assembled media is also in the room. So no, that's definitely not one. And my understanding is he's not even a target and never has been. So definitely one you can put to the side. To your point though, and I think I go back to my earlier answer, the Baron type thing, which is, and one, I need to come up with a much better way to say that in future, but also that's a combative additional midfielder in there. Now, quite rightly, people will say, well, what about Sterling? Yeah, that might be the answer, but I still think we've to land on, and Philippe Clement is to land on the long-term perspective for Dujon Sterling. Is he a midfielder that goes in there, and are we comfortable with that? Is he a slightly deeper line breaking up midfielder? Do we want him playing wide, as in right back berth, or is he going to be an answer in that centre back pairing? We've talked about a lot of players, but everybody likes Dujon Sterling. I like Dujon Sterling as well. The question for Dujon Sterling, I think, probably in his mind is, at some point, as much as I'm happy to play a lot of positions, I also want to know where you're going to see me in your squad.
Yeah.
It doesn't strike me as a type of player that's going to throw his rattle out the pram or anything like that. But yeah, it's probably something that's in his mind somewhere as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've spoken about some of the latest links here. I'm sure there'll be plenty more to come as we go through the next 7 days or so. And important to remember as well that none of us had heard of Robin Proper until about 24 hours before he signed. So there's definitely people out there that we won't have heard of that could definitely be making their way to Rangers over the coming days. Thank you very much to Iain, and thank you very much to Tommy for joining us. Tommy, your internet actually got better as we went through the call, which is quite incredible.
Man of the match is my internet connection. Where you go with absolutely no regards to Sky whatsoever.
Yes, thank you very much to you both for joining us. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. If you have enjoyed the podcast, please do drop a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the TII YouTube channel or any of the audio platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you may be listening to the podcast. It helps us massively and also means you don't miss out on any of the great content that we've got coming up. Over the next 7 days, we'll also be building up towards the Old Firm game on Sunday, and Kyle will be back with the team to start our build up on Wednesday night. So make sure you tune in for that one. But thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Until next time, goodbye.